So he proceeds to abuse me in the basement. And so I'm working with him Monday through Friday.
This is now becoming pretty regular then. I mean, you're out of your house, you're totally isolated. Your mother's not there now, but I'm sure she has to realize that this is still happening to you. You know, you're a grown woman, you're a mother, you're a provider, protector, and now you're kicking ass in your career, making money that you never had, which is like, I mean, that's the true success of it. Like, you made it, you know?
I would say to anyone, my whole career, now 40s, has been, that was a stepping stone towards it, right? Coming from sexual abuse, I was so shy. I didn't talk until I was like 21. The thing I was doing at 22 was such a transformation.
Right.
Because you're so isolated for so long.
Yeah.
Super shy. You're very insecure. I don't want anyone to really look at me. I had my own company. I got to be an executive in my 30s for a med spa company.
Yeah.
And work my way up. But it was really mentors. Now that you've kind of heard the actual sexual abuse
details,
the betrayal of my mom and the surviving and then getting out, right? And thriving and not letting my past really hold me back to a thriving future. Is there anything you feel you could take away now to give someone? I always think, save ourselves 20 years.
I think no matter how we grow up, because I didn't grow up with abuse like you, but I didn't grow up with money or my parents were divorced. I always had to take care of myself. I really did, and I think sometimes when you're young, it's terrible. But I think looking back at my life and yours, the reason you have become so successful is because you have work ethic. You knew Teresa was going to have to take care of Teresa. So I think sometimes when we know that we are all we got, nobody's there to bail us out, nobody's there to help, I think it just makes people really more well-rounded, determined. Like, you did everything you had to do to get where you are. And it wasn't ideal, but I do think sometimes the bad things in our life, or the things that we think are bad, which abuse is terrible, it really does shape us into better human beings sometimes. Even just how you forgive people and give people grace. You wouldn't be the person you are today if you didn't have your childhood. But you've made it into such a beautiful transformation, such a terrible, terrible thing. And look at you. You're a wonderful mother. You're super successful. You're trying to help people. So I think sometimes we do, sometimes focus too hard on the hand we were dealt, because that really isn't who we are. You're a true success story. I mean, like you would say, if you did it, everybody can do it. That's why you're one of my best friends. I love you.
I would say, I think for me, that what happens to you is absolutely not your fault, or to realize you were not to blame. What you went through. This is not something you should feel you need to carry. There's no blaming. That's probably my biggest, because I think we carry a lot of that later in our lives to feel like, why did the abuse happen? What did we do that created that abuse? You have to forgive yourself. You did absolutely nothing wrong, and find a way to love yourself. And then the way forward to me is to find other people around you that are out of what you were a part of, and find people that aspire you into the person that you deserve and want to be, not because of what was taken from you in an experience in life, whether it was, abuse or a bad upbringing. But surround yourself with people who can help get you to where you want to get. And sometimes it takes, I can speak from experience. I don't speak to any of my family, really at all. So my family is my relationships and my friendships today. And so sometimes we got to let go of everything and start over. And that's okay at any age. If you can sometimes let go of that, because I know sometimes we think, well, it's my family, it should be with my dad. And I would say, absolutely not. That is a choice. I'm not going to continue to love on my family, which I love my family, but I keep them at a distance. So I chose that in my 20s. And so sometimes you've got to let go of every single thing, walk away from every single thing to be you. So it started when I was around the age of 11.
And when was the first time? Where did it happen? How did it happen?
Yeah. So like I had mentioned, I grew up, in a trailer park. So it happened one afternoon. I was laying, in our living room in the trailer.
Yeah.
And I fell asleep. And like if you picture laying on a couch, I was not facing the direction that I could see somebody, right? So I'm laying on my side and I'm laying there and I'm kind of coming out of sleeping and I can feel somebody, or at least it felt like somebody touched me in my private area. And, in that moment, I was kind of scared, right? So so I just lay there and I kind of move, hoping that, like, was I dreaming? And some kind of alert somebody, honestly, if like, hey, I'm up.
Yeah. You felt that. Yeah.
But so I lay there, kind of move, and this person touches me again in my private area. Now it's on top of my clothes, right? At this point, I know that it happened because it's now twice that this person touched me. And so I laid there. It felt like forever. Didn't know what to do, to roll over, approach this person because I'm scared. And I know it's wrong in that moment. So I roll over and again, not knowing who had touched me. And I noticed this person still standing there. I looked this person in the eyes and I don't say anything at that point. I think because, I'm scared, right? 11. And so I just end up looking him in the eyes and I knew it was wrong. And at that point, I walked down the hallway of my trailer. I just curl up in my bed and I cry, not knowing what to do. But it is crazy. And I've said this on other episodes too. It's crazy. I didn't go into, oh my gosh, this guy touched me. It was so wrong. I went into, what did I do? Did I wear, because I had short shorts on, I mean, I'm 11. What did I do to make someone feel as an adult that it was okay to touch me?
Yeah.
I didn't blame him. I blamed myself, which happens a lot of times in abuse situations. We do the rationale of, what did I do to provoke it?
Which is so, as an adult, thinking now is so not true. But as an 11-year-old little girl, you're thinking he should know right from wrong. Why would he do this? And in blaming yourself, which is just, I'm sure you were scared. Did you tell anybody?
So
I know you did eventually, but like, what was the time frame of that?
Yeah, so I laid there that afternoon, cried. I didn't know what to do. Is someone going to believe me? Honestly, it seems all so uncomprehendable. I grew up in an environment a lot of times where I was yelling. So it was more emotional abuse than anything. So sexual abuse to me, I didn't know anybody.
Well, yeah.
Right? So as a kid, you can't comprehend the abuse. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So you're trying to process it. And that is why you go to the blame. So I don't remember the time frame. Let's call it a couple months.
Who did you tell?
I finally get the courage to tell a friend. She convinces me to tell her mom that the abuse had occurred. So we go to her house and I tell her mom, like, hey, I was laying on the couch one afternoon and, he touched me in an area that I felt was wrong. And she had basically said, this is the generation. Now I think we talk so much more openly about abuse. But back then, if something happens, we're not going to deal with it. We're not even going to tell anybody. It's the generation of secrets. And she convinced me to tell my grandmother because I didn't want to tell my mom at this point. So I proceed to tell my grandparents. My grandparents lived in the same trailer park. So I went and talked to my grandmother and my grandfather. And I just basically say, I was laying on the couch and, this person touched me and it was wrong. Even with my grandparents, although they listened, they didn't really want to deal with it either. They're just looking at me like, are you sure that had happened? And I was like, yes, I am positive this has happened. So they convinced me to tell my mom. So they get my mom to come up and, I tell my mom. And so then my mom is again the same way. Like, are you sure this had happened? And I was like, I'm absolutely sure he touched me.
Yeah.
She just basically said that I needed to let it go. You made it up. My mom was a single mom. So my mom just thought, you're jealous of the time that I'm not spending with you. So you're creating this situation to basically break her up.
Get in the middle of things, right?
Yeah.
Which is almost not even comprehensible. Yeah. I would kill somebody. The fact that if my son ever said, somebody touched me, that's all I would need to hear, right? So the fact that your own mother doesn't protect you and doesn't really believe you, or kind of just thinks that you have a different reason why you said that, is, I can't even imagine what an 11-year-old girl's thinking. Like, your mother's supposed to protect you. And that's the reaction that you get. Did it continue to keep happening? Was it something regular at this point? I mean, or was this just a one-time thing?
At that point, because she thought I was just really jealous of her time with this person. So for about a year, no more abuse happens for about a year, other than this man becomes obsessed with me. Think of us, at 11, 12, this is where we're playing with our friends. We're supposed to be having fun. And he just becomes obsessed. So he changes our home phone number. I can't give my phone number to friends. I have to go to school and come home after school. Like, I have really no friendships. They get taken away from me. I did have a really good group of three girls that I hung out with. Yeah. But at this point, it was no friends, go to school, come home. It was 100% control for about a year, and no sexual abuse at this point, just control, right? Which was plenty. I mean, I was overwhelmed as a kid. So he told me, now you're controlling me and you're stealing my childhood, right? And then we move. He convinces my mom to move. So we move a town over. It's not like we move far, but we move a town over, now from a trailer to like a fourplex.
So when does it start happening again?
So once we move into the fourplex, it happens pretty quickly at that point. I had mentioned that my mom basically, let's keep it a secret. Let's pretend it didn't happen. Yeah. Because she wanted me to believe it didn't happen. And so one night, so I have a younger sister, 7 years younger. Her and I shared a room, and we had like twin beds. And one night, my mom came up to my bedroom, and she basically says that he misses his children. So he's got 2 children. They didn't really have a relationship with him, and I'm not honestly sure why. I have no idea. But she proceeds to say he misses his children and he wants to, cuddle because he missed his kid. So now I'm like 12. I mean, cuddling at 12, but what am I going to do at this point? Because my mom, I had already told her, now my mom's promoting the abuse, and she is saying, can you cuddle with him?
Again, your mother's supposed to protect you, like we've talked about. So after you tell her, she doesn't believe you, and now she's just saying, hey, let him in your bed with you. You have nobody can even help you at this point. Was this a regular thing that he snuggled with you? I mean, 12 years old to be snuggling is, first of all, it's inappropriate. And he wasn't snuggling, obviously, because he missed his children. He had other motives behind it. But was this something that happened on a nightly basis or pretty regular?
It did. In my bedroom in this house, which was for about a year that we lived in before we moved again. It always pretty much happened in my bedroom.
Where's your mom? Is she
downstairs?
She's downstairs. Knowing that her boyfriend is snuggling with her 12-year-old daughter, she's just downstairs.
She's in the same house promoting it. So every time he comes up to my room at night, she's letting him. So this goes on for a year, where she just lets him at night, random nights, come and sleep next to me. Yeah. And at this point, he's not trying anything besides touching me. He's not to have, intercourse.
Now, is he touching you on top of your clothes or under your clothes?
Under my clothes. I mean, like we had mentioned, it's like, there's a reason why he's doing it, right?
Oh, yeah.
To, have pleasure.
Exactly.
Which is inappropriate. But I don't know what to do, right? Because my mom, a year before that, says like I should just ignore it. And now she's promoting it. At this point, I'm just surviving.
Yeah. And just kind of your life.
I didn't feel like at this point there was anything I could do. So that went on for about let's call it another year.
Yeah.
Before we moved.
And you move again. So he's obviously moving for reasons, probably, right? A fresh start. If somebody thought something was maybe off in your household, just pick up and move to the next town. Keep on the isolation, the control, which is terrible for a young girl anyways, to keep moving your friends, your everything, but you did say, I think you had mentioned about school though. Do you think anybody really had an idea that anything was happening to you?
Not at this point. I went to school, like I would get up, felt really ashamed, a lot of guilt, a lot of isolation. I'd go to school and back home, and I liked going to school because it was an outlet.
Yeah.
But it was tough because I couldn't really make friends because I wouldn't want to bring anybody around him. I would have been afraid that he would have abused them.
I mean, why would you want to bring somebody into that world? So you move again. Now, I guess at what point does the sexual abuse go from snuggling in the bed to really becoming more of sexual?
So we move. Now I'm going into the high school, 9th grade. I went to the same high school, 9th through 12th. I graduated. So in 9th grade, I get my permit, which for me, I think of survival. At this point, I know what he's doing is wrong. I'm surviving it. And all I can think about is I have to get out at some point. And so my plan was save some money, get a car, and graduate and move out. Yeah. So I start creating like a plan forward, like get out of this. I'm in pain every day. I'm isolating. I have no friend, nothing. So I'm just sitting there in the abuse, right? I turn 15, I get my permit and I get a job because I need to make money, part of the getting out.
Right.
So, because he's abusing me and he knows I want to make money, right? So he convinces me to basically get a job at some point. And so I didn't drive. My mom didn't drive, just so you know, at all. She never had her driver.
Never? That's interesting.
Yeah. So I think she felt trapped too in her own way. So he was really the only person to drive me. So I needed him to drive me. We end up working together. It was kind of like an advertisement company. And after hours, we would basically clean from 6 o'clock. That is when the abuse shifted, is when I was working with him at 15 in the advertisement company. And once we start cleaning the office, he would have never wanted anybody to know. So, they had where the cleaning supplies were, was kind of like a really small, dark room. Let's call it a 10 by 10. It was really small. And, he just basically one night, made me go in that room.
And you're not going to resist him because what are your options? So you just go with it.
I don't resist it because at this point, I'm not protected by my mom. No one believes me. And so I just cope with it. So he proceeds to abuse me in the basement. And so I'm working with him Monday through Friday.
This is now becoming pretty regular then. I mean, you're out of your house. You're totally isolated. Your mother's not there now, but I'm sure she has to realize that this is still happening to you. I mean,
sure.
She was facilitating it at the house. What would make her think he's not going to do it to you in a empty office building after hours?
I think people live in denial. I do.
Yeah,
I do. I don't know at this point. I mean, she already knew he had touched me.
Yeah.
She already promoted for him to sleep next to me. I mean, you could say that, but I think she wanted the relationship so bad that I think she just would do everything she could to overlook that dynamic of what was happening. I do. So the abuse happens on a regular basis. And, at this point, it goes from touching the clothes, having clothes taken off. And I think I had mentioned to you not to go into details on this episode or anything, but, he proceeds to try to have intercourse with me, again, without the details. He never goes inside me. This goes on for 2 years at this point. Yeah.
This is the time you're supposed to be, having the best time with your friends. And here you are working every day after school until 10 o'clock at night, getting abused in a little tiny basement storage room, basically. And all the while, nobody would even think it. You're putting a happy face on, you're going to school, you're just trying to live Teresa's life. And all the while, all this trauma is happening to you. It's pretty remarkable that you're able to do that.
Anyone going through abuse can relate that you're just surviving. You don't feel like you have an outlet yet. You're trying to fit in. You don't want any attention put upon you. You're going to school like nothing had happened.
Right.
Trying to have normal relationships and then going home and living a life of abuse.
I have a question, I think. Do you regret maybe not trying to tell more people? Like, I think because we've talked about how nobody talked about that stuff back then, but I mean, this is why we're doing this, right? To bring awareness and let people know that they're not alone. And, I think because of the social media era that there's so many things now that people can relate to. So do you regret that you didn't maybe go to the police, or do you think now looking back, it would have made a difference?
Yeah, I do. I would tell somebody now. My sister, she did tell the school system, I look up to her and I think, well, she was brave enough. I think back with me, we didn't have the social media. Yes, I had the school system, but I was so isolated. But I would say now with social media and all the different outlets, I told my mom. So my mom is the one that should protect me. And so what's hard for a kid is, okay, the person that's supposed to protect me didn't. And so it's hard to kind of see beyond that.
Right.
Right.
I can see that.
Right. Because it was your mom.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if you know it's wrong and this person that is supposed to help you didn't, and it's wrong, I would say, tell someone else. Tell someone else. Find avenues, whether it's a police officer in your school system, a friend, reach out until you're heard. Because, for me, I stopped because it was my mom. And looking back now, I should have went and talked to someone. There's a lot of manipulation that happens in abuse. So, if I would have threatened him, which I had a couple times saying, I'm going to turn you in, his response was always, if you turn me in, your mom knows. I was really scared. I didn't want my mom. I know she didn't protect me, but I didn't want my mom to go to jail.
You were still looking out for your mom in her best interest, even though she didn't have yours.
I was just too scared. I think the threat of my mom going to jail for something that he did, that was hard to comprehend, So I think it was really just my mom and his manipulation that probably too scared me. There was many times that I wanted to tell someone, but it is scary. I mean, being somebody who's been abused, it is scary too. I'm sure people can relate that have been abused. It's scary because you start thinking too about the consequences of, okay, if I tell somebody and it's not proven.
Well, that's just it. Your mother, would she even take your side? Probably not, because hasn't up until this point. So she would probably have defended him if you did turn him in.
I don't know, but that's the part you think about it. Yeah. Like, what are my options? I would have definitely told somebody. If I put myself back into that position now, I would have not stopped at my mom.
I know you had said that he kind of kept everything very, like, the circle small. You didn't have a lot of friends that came over, but you did have some friends, like, in the family dynamic that you guys used to spend time with, correct? And is that not where you met your first, I want to say, boyfriend, when you were 15?
Yeah. So we had this small group, very isolated. So my friends were, again, a few at school. Not wanting to have a lot of friends. Yeah. I would never have wanted to bring somebody around him thinking that they might be abused too, or pick up that I was abused, because I carried a lot of shame with that. Right. So I didn't want anyone, if they felt, like, not that they would have seen that I was abused. Right. But, you're so uncomfortable. So we have a small group of friends. I can't have any boyfriends. Actually, I'm 15. I meet a boy that's in the family circle and I have sex for the first time and get pregnant at 15. And I had my daughter at 16. So while the abuse is happening, I also get pregnant.
That's a lot to take in for a 15-year-old girl. Did you tell anybody that you were pregnant?
I didn't. I think meeting this kid, and he's my age, I'm not even sure what to do. One, I'm being sexually abused too. So the whole dynamic of being sexually abused, and then I have sex one time at 15 and get pregnant. I don't even know what to do. Yeah. Like, it's overwhelming. But I do tell him, hey, I'm pregnant, because I took a pregnancy test and I didn't know I was pregnant. I was scared. I'm 15. I don't even know who to tell. Yeah. Not knowing enough at this age, I sit there and I go in denial and I don't tell anyone until my mom finds out at 7 months. So I hide my pregnancy for 7 months. I don't know what to do. I know I should probably go to the doctor. I would just sit there and just be like, okay, maybe it's just going to go away. And there's a time even where I go to the doctor. I have an pneumonia. They take an x-ray and I'm like, my gosh, like, are they going to see the baby? My mom's sitting there and I'm like, are they going to find out?
I can't even imagine. I was scared being pregnant the first time as a woman who was married and in my late 20s. It can be a scary thing and you're all by yourself hiding it. How did you hide it for so long?
Think about we're teenagers. I just wore baggy sweatshirts. No one would have known I was pregnant. I didn't start showing until 6 months. I didn't really have any issues during the time I was carrying her.
But I'm assuming that your abuser knew you were pregnant because you can't, I mean, if you have no clothes on or you're not going to be able to hide that baby bump forever. I mean, what did he say to you? Or did he even say anything?
He never said anything.
That's so strange. You're 6, 7 months pregnant. You have a little baby bump. He still continued to sexually abuse you.
That's correct.
And doesn't say anything.
I think he probably thinks it's his.
Well, I would assume he must think it's his because you don't go out with boys. You don't go anywhere. He's abusing you during the week. So he must assume that it is his child.
He did for sure. So how it ends up coming out, taking a shower one day and my mom comes walking in. And at this point I had a stomach because I'm like, let's call it 7 months pregnant. Yeah. And my mom's looking at me and she's like, what is that? You know, basically my stomach. And I'm like, you know, like, hey, like we're having a baby. And I remember, you know, getting out of the shower and then just sitting down with my mom and she's like, are you pregnant? And clearly I was, you know, she's like, what's going on? My mom didn't react in a way a typical mom would react. But I would say to you, I think in that moment, my mom and her response basically is, if you don't want to have this baby, we will adopt it.
Oh my God.
So I think in that moment, I would say that she thought it was his.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, and the fact she's calm about it, like most mothers, when their 15-year-old daughter is pregnant, is not so calm, but it's because she knew.
She was just like, we need to get to the doctor. We need to make sure that the baby's okay. And if you don't want to keep the baby, we will raise that baby.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you obviously you go to the doctors and everything's fine, right?
I go to the doctor and thank goodness everything was good. She was healthy. And then obviously we have a baby after 2 months of, finding out that I was pregnant.
Yeah.
So then I have the baby.
So you have the baby. Let's talk a little bit about actually the hospital experience, because I can think back to my experience. I was so scared and it's painful. And here you are, 16 years old, abused your whole childhood, basically. Now you're pregnant. I can't even process what you must have been thinking, feeling in labor with a baby at that age with no support. It's mind-boggling, really.
I remember going to the hospital that morning. We didn't live close to the hospital. They didn't want you to come in unless you were like almost to the end of dilation. My mom came with me and she was really the only person at this point in the hospital. So we're walking up and down the hospital. Felt like forever. I'm in massive pain. I'm young. I'm scared, right? Like I'm 16. I'm really scared. My mom at this point, I mean, she was good in the sense that, got the things that I needed and, kind of helped me through the process. It was tough. It was a long day. I remember at that point being angry. I blamed her for being pregnant because she's allowing the sexual abuse and because I'm abused, I'm curious about sex, right? So I have sex one time and I get pregnant, not knowing consequences. I'm pretty quiet that day other than in pain.
So after you have the baby, who helps you? I mean, because you're in school still and you continue to go to school and we know you graduate and everything. Who helps you raise the baby? Does the dad help?
No, he's exactly my age, same high school. We're in the same high school. He doesn't deal with it. So when I tell him, I got pregnant, I never really talk to him. Like I saw him because it was in our small circle.
So crazy.
But he just wouldn't deal with it. I'd be around his parents. He hid it.
I get, who did they think the dad was? That is what is kind of crazy to me. Like, what did the family, friends, or people think? Who did they think the dad was?
I don't know. They probably thought I just slept around.
More shame you're carrying, right? Which is so crazy. Nobody wants to know the dad. And your mom is assuming it's her boyfriend, which is so messed up on so many levels. I can't even imagine doing that, going to school, you were working, still being abused, correct?
After the baby, he still abuses me. So the abuse goes on from 11 to 17, until I move out. So having the baby, it's with my mom. My dad eventually comes, which we'll talk about my child later, but I don't have much of a relationship with him, but he does show up for, a short period of time.
Yeah.
And then I go home and I basically have to raise this baby, right? And now I'm 16 and I want to graduate school and I want to graduate with honors. Back in also that generation, if you got pregnant to a separate school or you typically got your GED.
And you just took a break from school while you were pregnant visibly, and then you went back when the baby was maybe born or whatever the case was.
Yeah, so I had her in April. The beauty of that is school for the session, my sophomore year ended in June.
Right.
So I didn't really miss anything. We move again. So I drive for 2 years. My junior and senior year, I drive back and forth just to graduate. I wanted to graduate from the same high school I started with. It was the friends I had that I did have when I was there. Being pregnant, the school had programs for kids who had gotten pregnant. So I had a small group of girls that had babies as well. I only had to go to school from like 7 to 11:30 or something like that. And then your afternoon, I could use my work in the evening as credits. But they had programs for girls that were pregnant where you would work together to basically how to raise a baby while life is happening.
Yeah.
So there's great programs. I'm able to even speak to 8th grade kids when I was in high school on being a teen mom to say, listen, if you have sex, you can get pregnant. One time that happened to me. No one knew about the abuse, but I could speak very openly about being a teen mom. I basically raise her without the dad. He doesn't participate in her life until about 2. Once I graduate, I do confront the dad and I say, listen, you're going to have to tell your parents.
Another secret you have to keep, right?
Yeah.
Like everything's already a secret in your life. The shame, the guilt. Now you're keeping this secret, and your mom thinks the baby's the boyfriend's.
So his parents, they don't believe me. I think they thought I just slept around. So we do a DNA test. It proves that it's his. But then once I graduate, I get out. I get my daughter out of that environment right when I graduate. Like within a month, I get an apartment. So I had been saving. I was in survival mode, having a plan, graduate with honors. You want more for your daughter, so you got to get out.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
True success story.